I'll get going on my talk here. So the title of my talk is The Immensity of Minutiae Utilizing Bryophytes to Detect an Ice Age Refugium in the North Cascades. My name is Miles Berkey. I'm a third-year master's student at Western Washington University. The study area of my thesis is called Barlow Pass, and you might be familiar with it. It's located east of Everett by about 30 miles. It's off the Mountain Loop Highway, and it's pictured here in the left photo. It's a big, previously glacially carved out valley, and is the subject of my research. You can go to the next slide. So Barlow Pass has had about 80 years of botanical interest. People have been finding a lot of interesting things out there. There is a high diversity of bryophytes. Can we go back? I think this is on a timer. There's a high diversity of bryophytes out there, and bryophytes are basically mosses, liverworts, and hornworts, small non-vascular plants. There's also a high diversity of these things called moonworts, botriciums, highest diversity in the state. There's also a high diversity of flowering plants. So this high diversity of flowering plants combined with all these other taxa of plants make this place very interesting in a biodiversity way. Go to the next slide. So one possible explanation for why this place is so rich in biodiversity is maybe because of its glacial history. So you can see here on the left, this map is depicting the Cordilleran ice sheet about 16,400 years ago, advancing out of British Columbia. Go back. And almost covering what is indicated there as Barlow Pass, but not quite. This comes up on a lot of geological maps. I'm kind of putting the two pieces of evidence together and asking the question, was Barlow Pass a possible Ice Age refugium? You can go to the next slide. So to set the stage here, Ice Age refugium were places that were ice-free during the last glacial maximum about 16,000 years ago. And for that matter, they were ecologically stable. They supported Arctic taxa, so those species that are present now in the Arctic were more displaced and more widespread down in temperate areas where we are today. And they also supported, still today support what's called paleo relics. Ice Age refugia are important because they affected the evolution trajectory of northern taxa. So we see a lot of endemism in these places that are called Ice Age refugia. And then we also see relictualism exhibited in these Ice Age refugia. So species of a previous glacial time displaced today, far removed from their normal distribution. We call those things relics. And that photo on the top left that you can see there shows the last remaining caribou that were on Haida Gwaii. Sadly, colonists hunted them all off in the early 1900s. But that's an example of a glacial relic. We can go to the next slide now. And so Ice Age refugia are important for maintaining relictual taxa, endemism. They might also be important for understanding places where species enduring southern range contraction might retreat to in light of climate change. So it's relatively important to understand where these places are and how they can serve us or serve the ecosystems today. So I'm asking the question, was Barlow Pass an Ice Age refugium? And so the approach I'm taking is to basically survey, evaluate the entire bryophyte flora of Barlow Pass and determine its characteristics similar to known Ice Age refugia. So characteristics that we see displayed in some of the bryophyte floras of Ice Age refugia are that there's many species or a higher proportion of species that are disjunct from their normal distribution. They're called disjuncts. Also, these species exhibit poor abilities to disperse. So we oftentimes with these species, we haven't seen any production of sporophytes. So spores are produced from sporophytes and they have the potential for long distance dispersal. So we have this dispersal limitation trait along with these disjunct species, which is exhibited in an Ice Age refugia. And I'm looking to see if that's exhibited in the bryophyte flora of Barlow Pass. I'm also pairing my work with a bit of geomorphological mapping in Barlow Pass to see where the Paleoalpine glaciers might have advanced from and to, and how they interacted with the continental ice sheet in the vicinity of Barlow Pass to kind of tell the glacial story in light of these possible relics I'm finding. So we can go to the next slide now. Okay, so my methods are basically step one, to develop the bryophyte flora of Barlow Pass and 4 other similar but previously glaciated sites. Factors I'm trying to control for are all these, the glaciated sites you can see here on the right map indicated by Davis Peak, Mount Johannesburg, Whitehorse Mountain, Pilchuck. Those sites are all contained within the maximum extent of the Cordilleran ice sheet. So they have evidence of being entirely covered by the continental ice sheet. These sites, however, I'm developing the bryophyte flora as well. I've already done that. And what's important in developing the bryophyte flora of those sites and Barlow Pass is that I'm comparing the species envelope overlap. So basically, in doing this, I'm showing that there's equal microhabitat availability expressed through this entire representation of the floras, so that microhabitats in Barlow Pass are likely not the reason, or unique habitats in Barlow Pass are likely not the reason why we see these relictual taxa down in Barlow Pass. Otherwise, can be explained that these relics down in Barlow Pass are likely a result of long-term emplacement through the glaciations. Finally, I'm not going to talk about this at all, but I'm comparing Barlow Pass to all of the North American refugia, looking at seeing if Barlow Pass is justified as an Ice Age refugium based on comparisons to other places. We can go to the next one. So results, summer of 2022 and also 2023, I went out and surveyed all of these sites. I collected about 1,172 specimens in total. 262 species are represented among all those specimens. Many of the same species occur in all my sites, so there's significant overlap in the species envelope between all these sites. Each site is rare species. There are no strong refugial indicating or relictual species in my control sites. However, I have numerous species that I found in Barlow Pass, and I'll talk about those right up next. Okay, so this is a really important piece of evidence for a possible Ice Age refugium scenario for Barlow Pass. The species is called Certomnium hymenolophoides. It is the first occurrence of this genus in Washington State. It was found behind a waterfall up in Perry Creek within the vicinity or within the Barlow Pass area. It's dioicous, so it requires a male and a female for sexual reproduction. Male and female reproductive parts are on separate plants. In North America, only females are known. And what's interesting is this species has been discussed as a glacial relict in its southern distribution. So it's what I consider is a strong indicator of Ice Age refugia. It's over 500 kilometers from its closest location in down in Banff, Jasper area. But otherwise, it's an Arctic species disjunct down here in this temperate area. Okay, we can go to the next slide. This is another, I believe it's a strong indicator of Ice Age refugium for Barlow Pass. This is a large leafy liverwort. It's called Macrodiplophilum imbricatum, and you can see its distribution extends all the way down along the Pacific coast, but becomes exceptionally rare south of Haida Gwaii, and it's a strong indicator. It's a new species for Washington State. We can go to the next one. This one's a really interesting occurrence. I found this at the base of Big Four Mountain in Barlow Pass. It is new to the contiguous US. This genus is new to the lower 48. It's an Arctic species. It does produce sporophytes in its normal range, so I can't rule out the possibility that it landed post-glacial in the Holocene. A spore flew and landed down in Barlow Pass in the Holocene. Go to the next slide. Okay, so this is a lot of information on this slide, but basically this is the results of my, I regenerated the alpine glaciers and the continental ice sheet maximum extent, and likely what we see as a glacial lake was in place and around Barlow Pass, and possibly around that lake was habitat for Ice Age refugia species. Let's go to the next one. I see I have a 1-minute warning sign, so I wanted to at least talk about what I found in the parks. So within the North Cascades National Park, this is Davis Peak. It was an exceptionally wonderful site to work in. It's fairly remote. You can go to the next, or you can click. So we got some new species for this site and some rare species. Grimmia tenuata is a new species for Washington found within here. Hopefully it didn't die in the burn of 2023, but we'll see. But yeah, other new critically imperiled species for the park were collected up there. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, so this is a rare sphagnum. It's known from all my sites, but yeah, it's just a rarity. We can go to the next slide. Yeah, and then Physidens osmundioides, critically imperiled for Washington State. I found it abundant in all my study sites, so we're reevaluating its conservation status here in Washington. We can go to the next one. Johannesburg was an amazing, immense mountain to work underneath. Several new species to the park were found. Also, a new species and genus to Washington State was found at the base of Johannesburg, Paraleucobryum inervae. And then finally, I think this is the last one I'll talk about, Conostemum tetragonum, new to North Cascades National Park, critically imperiled in Washington. It's relatively rare in Washington State. And I think that'll do it. Oh, and then I have another one. But yeah, so new species for Washington State and new rare stuff for Washington State as well for my sites. And I think that concludes it. So yeah, thanks to everybody that's helped me and supported me in this project. So I guess I'll take some questions now if there's any.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just love seeing photos of moss. Bryophytes is my favorite. All right, we do have, I think, one question in the chat. Robert asks, so does female only mean a founder effect of colonization?
Yeah, so female only may infer that. Like what likely has been discussed with this species is that it was more widespread during the last glacial maximum when Arctic vegetation communities were more widespread in northern US. And so this is likely an area that it just kind of retreated to, or it was in place and really didn't spread too much at all since the glaciers receded from here.
Yeva asks, what is the specific species again that's new to North Cascades National Park?
Grimmia tenuata. It was new to Davis Peak. That's new to Washington State. Paraleucobryum inervae is a large dicranoid bryophyte, if you're familiar. I don't have any good pictures of it, but it's rather obvious when you look at it. I also have rare species from my other sites from the Forest Service that I just didn't have time to talk about. Yeah.
And Hazel asks, can you describe what fieldwork looks like for seeking these rare and cryptic species?
Yeah, fieldwork, it basically, most Ice Age refugial species occur on wet rocks. And we often find them at the base in north-facing aspects. There's kind of this really interesting phenomenon I'm finding. And so basically you got to seek out these spots. So fieldwork involves going to these wet talus fields, boulder fields, north faces of mountains. It's rather requires some technical maneuvering. The fieldwork often is on really steep slopes. I did have to use some rock climbing methods to get into some of these places. So fairly technical, but not always.
And I have a question. I'm just wondering, there's no more in the chat unless there is. But I'm just wondering, with finding new species is really exciting. And how do you share that with the park?
I've submitted a couple reports on my fieldwork to the park. I think it might be on IDIS up on there. I share it with the North Cascades. I'll share the information with well, there's no botanist or plant ecologist right now, but the curatorial person that manages the collections will be interested, so I'll provide a report. Also, I'm going to be defending my master's pretty soon, so I don't know, I'll probably invite park agency contacts and stuff too.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know the curator there well, so I was like, I know she's going to be interested in this.
Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, very cool.
I worked for the North Cascades for 7 years.
Oh, nice.
So awesome. Yeah, it's like a second home to me out there.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for that.